It's that time of year again. Everyone knows that the holidays can become overwhelming quickly, so the sooner you get things done, the better. For both shoppers and businesses, the best time to score great deals during the holidays is Black Friday, Cyber Monday weekend. Shopify is the commerce platform behind millions of businesses around the world, from household names to entrepreneurs who are participating in their first Black Friday, Cyber Monday this year. This Black Friday, join thousands of new entrepreneurs hearing for the first time with Shopify. Sign up for your free trial today at shopify.com/promo. That's shopify.com/promo. Go to shopify.com/promo and make this Black Friday one to remember.
Well, I mean, I don't know if you saw this video circulating on social media, but, the president met the president of Syria, al-Shara, in the Oval Office a couple of days ago. And, he asked him, he's like, well, how many wives do you have? and it's just like, oh, what an amazing question.
Welcome to Quiet Riot, a politics podcast that prefers to tickle your chakras rather than to enrage your prana. I'm Andreou.
And I'm Naomi Smith. On Quiet Riot, our mantra is to treat you like an adult and give you calls to action rather than reduce you to learned helplessness.
So get into a lotus position, take a deep pranayama breath, and prepare for another Quiet Riot. Hello and welcome to Quiet Riot. I'm Alex.
And I'm Naomi.
And I'm Kenny. And since we've missed Naomi terribly, we decided to have no guest this week and give her lots of time to chatter. What are we discussing today, guys?
Well, it's great to be back. There is a lot to talk about. And look, the first rule of a coup surely is you do not talk about the coup. Starmer's team is trying to send a message of strength and manages instead send a message of absolute vulnerability. So we're going to talk about whether it is time for change at the top.
And after a monumental cock-up, the BBC is under attack from both sides of politics and from both sides of the Atlantic. Does it deserve to be defended? Or has it, like so many other legacy giants, outlived its purpose?
So let's get cracking on those two pretty existential topics.
Quiet Riot.
When Starmer saw the briefing emerge on Tuesday night in several news sources about a leadership coup against him by West Streeting as soon as this month, he must have hit the roof, demanded to know who was behind it, only to be told, like a stalked cheerleader in a horror film, that the call is coming from inside the house. What has emerged pretty clearly in the following hours was that this was not some WhatsApp group message that had been screen grabbed and circulated and blown out of proportion just to make mischief. This was a coordinated briefing from a senior Downing Street source, ostensibly protective of the PM, to several senior journalists. Maybe they were spooked by news that the Streeting for PM website had been registered. Streeting is claiming it's nothing to do with him, and I have to admit, if I were a newspaper wanting to punk Starmer, registering that domain, then tipping number 10 to its existence, would be a pretty easy way of doing it. The net effect, much like Tubbs' "we didn't burn him," was to convince most of those journalists either that a coup was imminent or that Downing Street is steeped in paranoia. Instead of projecting the confidence and fighting spirit that they intended, the briefing telegraphed weakness and anxiety. Right, so what do we think? Cock-up or conspiracy? Let me throw this one out.
Is your question that they were trying to squash Streeting's leadership campaign because they got wind of it?
Here's a useful parallel. When the Andy Burnham stuff happened just before conference, there was a sense that he sort of went too far and actually helped Labour gel together, defend against what they perceived as a threat. It boosted Starmer. He ended up in a much more combative mode, made a better speech to conference, and it sort of backfired on Andy Burnham. The key difference was that news cycle, as it were, moved from Andy Burnham first. It started from Andy Burnham. So Downing Street were responding. There was nothing really going on. It was completely out of the blue, just Downing Street coming out and briefing this stuff. And let me just add this one detail. the day before, West Streeting was scheduled to be the person that did the media rounds. So he ended up having to go out. Honestly, nothing to do with me. I don't know what they're talking about.
Funnily enough, over the weekend, I was watching everything that was going on as usual. And I came into Best of Britain on Monday morning, and we always have our big team meeting. And I said to them all, well, clearly, where's this on manoeuvres? And they sort of looked at me and asked me why. And I said, well, because of the various interviews he gave over the weekend, he was departing from what was quite clearly the line from Number 10 around Mamdani. He was being much more supportive of him and, in fact, making the case that Labour are a more left-wing party than the Democratic Party in the USA. And the style and tone of what he was saying and the departure from the lines that Bridget Phillipson had gone with, to me, signalled, here's somebody quite clearly on manoeuvres. So if I'd picked up on that just from briefly watching bits and bobs of political coverage over the weekend, of course, Number 10 had. So they were, I suspect, worried that he was about to act more quickly than its widely held view that nobody's going to go for anybody, whether it's Kemi Badenoch or Keir Starmer, until after the May elections next year. So, yeah, I think perhaps they tried to cut him off at the knees before he was quite ready to wield the knife.
It's pretty inelegant, though, if that was the point, right? Because I think the other thing it did, it displayed quite a profound anxiety from Downing Street. What do I mean by that? A government and a prime minister doesn't survive or fall because of a lack of ambitious people who would quite like the position of leadership, right? Westminster is never short of ambitious people. A government survives or falls on how competent it is seen, on how confident it is seen, on how strong it is seen. What they did displayed the absolute opposite. It displayed a government that doesn't have confidence, a government that doesn't have strength and doesn't trust those around it. I just thought it was pretty weird to basically fire the starter's pistol on your own leadership challenge.
I just don't know how they're not utterly panicked. The entire party, and Number 10 surely are. They lost a very safe seat in Caerphilly in a weak third place position. It is disastrous for them. The Labour vote is fracturing. They haven't won over reform waverers. All they have done with the current strategy is fractured their own vote. This is a party that a little over 18 months ago was polling in the high 40%. They have mishandled so much. Sinister disability welfare cuts, mishandling the winter fuel, prevaricating over the 2-child benefit cap, all sorts of things that you would expect and hope that a Labour government wouldn't do, they've done. So I think they should be panicked. And why are they beginning to think about this? Why are so many backbenchers briefing to the media about it? Well, because Starmer just has not been a good prime minister. He has shown such poor judgment throughout his tenure as PM, from appointing Sue Gray, which I think was, I said at the time, a really odd choice for such a hyper-political role, to put a civil servant there. For a man who said that, we're going to put country before party, the reality has been they have put faction before absolutely everything. And I just don't see how he can survive when they're performing this badly. And there might be a feel-good factor for Labour heading into the next election if by then NHS waiting lists are down and growth is up. But they are going to fail on things like building 1.5 million homes. They're not going to get the growth that they've made their number one mission. And they have consistently boxed themselves in on various economic avenues, whether it's fiscal rules or their relationship with the EU, which has just sought to make it so much harder for themselves than they needed to.
They haven't got anything to look forward to, have they? It's been a miserable summer for them. We're about to go into a budget which is going to wreck Christmas. They're going to get a kicking all the way through the festive season and into January. As once we come out of January, the next big thing that they have to look forward to is the local elections, in which they're going to get a kicking as well. And those are just the two biggest things that are on the horizon. And you factor in then the fact that Starmer has the lowest popularity ratings of any prime minister since the Stone Age, essentially, right now. And anybody who is working on behalf of the Labour Party must be looking at what's going on and thinking, I don't know if I even want to hit the streets and, get the votes out. I can't see anything other than, as you said, Naomi, panic just running through the veins of everything that comes out of number 10 right now.
Okay, so I agree with the basic diagnosis. There's a lack of political judgment. I mean, that is writ large. I don't agree necessarily about the bleakness of the situation going forward. The Bank of England actually today upgraded growth forecasts. The 10-year and 30-year bond yields are about half a point lower than they were at the peak in January, when everyone was going that Rachel Reeves is in trouble and this will significantly destroy the headroom that she had, such as it was. And so I think some of the indicators are going the right way, not that anyone is paying attention, because the political judgments and the comms have been so appallingly poor. I just don't see how making yet another political miscalculation improves that. Surely it makes it worse. Surely it shows them to be continuing to make poor political judgments. So one thing that was notable, I think, in PMQs today was that Starmer evaded the opportunity to give Morgan McSweeney his full confidence. Let's have a little listen.
The person responsible for the culture in number 10 is his Chief of Staff, Morgan McSweeney. Does the Prime Minister have full confidence in him?
Morgan McSweeney, my team and I are absolutely focused on delivering for the country. And let me be clear, of course, Mr. Speaker, I've never authorised attacks on Cabinet members. I appointed them to their posts because they're the best people to carry out their jobs.
I just don't understand how someone who is meant to be in charge of sort of electoral strategy and has presided over the last 14, 15 months can still be in Downing Street. If you were a football team, you would have some loyalty to the manager who helped you get promoted. But if halfway through the season you're in last place in the relegation zone, sort of 20 points behind, you have to look at changing that person. I just like their political strategy at its core, this idea that you come into power and your first year does not look after your base, but instead pisses off your base and tries to go after voters that will probably never vote for you. It has been so poor and so disastrous and so predictably poor that I just don't get what the fuck that man is still doing there. If Starmer turned around and sacked McSweeney, it would have two effects. I think it would probably be his very last chance because there's no one else around to blame anymore. But I think it would probably buy him time.
It would definitely buy him time with his own MPs. McSweeney not popular with swathes of the Parliamentary Labour Party and national campaign people around the country. So it would certainly bide him a bit of time. In terms of the voters, though, they don't know who McSweeney is, and it's Starmer who is the hate figure. When my team go out and do vox pops around the country, in places like Clacton, but further afield as well, and they have pictures on a board and asking people in the street, do you know who this person is? What do you think of them? They are viscerally anti-Starmer at the moment. They all know who he is and they all have negative things to say about him. So he should have got rid of him a long time ago. The loyalty he owed McSweeney was not over winning the general election, it was over winning the leadership election. So McSweeney is running Labour together. He then becomes the guy leading the internal battle to get Starmer elected. And it is invariably true that the people who are very, very good at winning internal elections are very, very good at that job. And it rarely translates into being able to talk to the public at large. And when we look at that general election result in 2024, it was not a resounding win for the Labour Party. It was a very, very broad and shallow vote. It was a low vote share on a low turnout. And it was largely thanks to two things happening. One, the desperate state of the Tory party and the failures of the last 15 years that voters were railing against, and then the extremely efficient distribution of votes between the Lib Dems and Labour in not vying for each other's target seats. That's why they won, not because of some political genius of Morgan McSweeney.
I mean, I would say that was a political choice to distribute their resources and go after seats in that efficient a way. So I don't necessarily accept completely that McSweeney had no hand in that election victory. When Starmer took over, Labour were 22 points behind the Conservatives. Yes, Johnson very much blew up his own premiership, and what followed made the Conservatives incredibly unpopular. But you cannot completely exclude the fact that Labour also, in that meantime, made themselves a palatable electoral choice, that they weren't at the point that Starmer took over. Like I said, 22 points behind. So yes, Johnson completely killed his own party's brand, but Starmer did also improve his own party's brand. But like I said, whatever loyalty you owe to someone at that point, it has been so clear and obvious to anyone that observes politics from any point of view, friendly to Starmer, unfriendly to Starmer, from the right, from the left. The one thing people will agree on is that Starmer's electoral strategy looking forward, so his comms and policy, and his strategy on what voter demographic he tries to appeal to, has been a disaster. And so I just don't get it. I don't get it.
What about Kemi Badenoch? Did she have a good pop at PMQs this week?
She tried to. Somehow she managed to look even more unlikable and petty.
The truth is, he says these attacks aren't authorised. That means he's lost control of number 10, because that's where they're coming from. But the real scandal, Mr. Speaker, the real scandal is that 2 weeks from a budget, the government has descended into civil war. Instead of fixing the mess they've made of the economy, they're all... Mr. Speaker, they're all chuntering. These are the feral MPs that number 10 has been talking about. But unbelievably, Mr. Speaker, the Prime Minister's advisors have been reduced to briefing that MPs can't get rid of him, and I'm not making this up, they can't get rid of him because it would destabilise international markets.
It really was like she squared up to yet another open goal and managed instead to kick a puppy that had wandered onto the pitch. She's just, she looked, she's just, I don't see how any of what she does doesn't simply benefit Reform. On the last few big issues, Reform have largely kept out of it, actually. They've let the other parties do the damage. Farage had a question at PMQs as well, and he came in and asked about migrant hotels. He didn't get involved in the Westminster gossip stuff at all. And I just think that makes him look so much better than her.
And this has become quite a lot of the attack line on Starmer in the last 48 hours. It has been that Farage has done 5 press conferences in the last month to Starmer's 1. And that Starmer has done so many international visits since the Labour Party conference that he is just not here doing the job of holding his party together at quite a critical time in the run-up to an extremely difficult budget. And as you say, Farage just sort of appearing cool, calm and collected, while, of course, rage baiting and trying to froth everyone at the seams over immigration as per. But the kind of tone is really, really stark in terms of its difference between the three of them, in fact, Kemi, and Farage.
The problem is that Starmer is not particularly good at doing press conferences and giving speeches. So would increasing the volume of him doing that be a help to him? I'm not sure. Or would actually shoving him down people's throats once a week make the situation worse for him? I don't know. I don't know what the answer is. What do you think, Kenny? You're a PR person. This is very much your wheelhouse.
Oh, he wouldn't want to hear my advice. Whatever you're doing in terms of presentation, there are 3 things that you've got to do. You've got to prepare. And Starmer can do that. And you've got to practice. He's got to make the time to do that. But then the most important part is you've got to perform. You can lift people's ability to perform. His team could put him through the mill. They could inject a little bit more life into him. Because, he ain't a natural. We know that. But we've seen speeches over the last couple of years where he's quite clearly been given a shot of something just to, I don't mean drugs, but, a bit of a booster to try and up his energy levels and have something, positive to say. And I think that one of the biggest problems he's got is not just, of course, that he struggles on the performance side. The other issue he deals with is there isn't that much good news to deliver.
Exactly, Kenny. That's what it is. He's never going to be one of the great political orators that goes down in history as such, but he can be better than he often is. And the times when he is better, notably most recently at the Labour Party conference, is when he's actually talking about things he believes and cares about. And when he is allowed to do that, or allows himself to do it, and actually talk about policies and issues and principles that are rooted in his own value set, he does come across far better because it's authentic. And that is all anyone is asking for of politicians in the modern era.
I mean, I would consider drugs at this point, to be honest. For him, or for
all
me,
of us.
For him or for me, I think one of us needs a buzz to get through the next few months.
Oh, I think you need a benzo and he needs a amphetamine.
It's such a serious issue for modern political parties. It's almost inexcusable to put somebody who doesn't have the requisite level of charisma into a job like this. For the last 20 years, we've had cameras and microphones everywhere. It's not like it's a surprise the way the modern world works. It's not as if we're living in the 1950s anymore, where the Prime Minister will get interviewed by some bow-tied loon from the BBC now and again. This is a core part of the job. It's part of the leader's toolbox. Labour as a whole have to take group responsibility for putting somebody in this position who we know is not a charismatic leader.
Quiet riot. The Lincoln Wishlist sales event is happening now. Here's what's on everyone's wish list. Enjoying holiday jingles with brilliant 3D audio that surrounds you? Check. Watching snow flurries through the panoramic vista roof? Check. Packing up presents with the spacious Lincoln Splitgate? Check. Everything you want. All standard on the 2025 Lincoln Navigator SUV. Visit your local Lincoln retailer or learn more at Lincoln.com for exceptional offers on 2025 Lincoln vehicles today.
Quiet riot. To a slightly, more serious question, do you think this affects Rachel Reeves' position with regard to the coming budget? Lucy Powell has spoken against breaking manifesto pledge on tax. And even Wes Streeting hinted at it on Wednesday's morning rounds by saying we should be a government that keeps its promises, which seems quite contrary to also wanting the two-child benefit cap gone, which Reeves has now all but confirmed will go, and more spending. So there is a group of people within Labour who are acting as opposition in the sense that they are promising both the spending that Labour voters want, but also the low taxes that they promised. So what's Reeves' position going forward into this budget, given there is now even more pressure on, because it seems like Starmer's leadership hangs on whether she does well at the end of the month or not?
Well, I think the two of them are inextricably linked to one another, and one doesn't survive the other one going. It is for both of them, this budget, and as Kenny said, coming just before Christmas when people are hoping to feel a little bit more benefit in their pockets, and certainly retail and hospitality hoping that people will be feeling buoyant to prop up sales. I think it's going to be extremely tricky for both of them. I am surprised that they seem to be rowing back on some of the bigger ticket popular things that had been mooted earlier in the year, like a big windfall tax on the banks who posted surprise profit this year. And of course, the energy companies who are universally loathed by absolutely everyone. I think to do income tax hikes without penalising the big corporates who often avoid tax and who can bloody well afford to be paying a bit more, this is just not going to land well with anyone.
And this obviously opens a window of opportunity for the Liberal Democrats, which they have been taking advantage of, because they're very much saying, let's put a windfall tax on the banks because they've benefited from quantitative easing in a way that was neither expected nor worked for, and they're saying let's put a bit of more tax on the energy companies, etc. And there is actual change at the top of the Liberal Democrats as well, isn't there, Naomi? Can you brief us?
Yes. So they've been having internal party elections, which come round every few years. And this time it is electing a new president, vice president, and their federal board. The election was held over the last month or so, and the winners announced this week. And Josh Babrinde, who is the absolutely brilliant young MP in Eastbourne, has been elected as party president. And I think that this is a very wise move by the party. He is personable, likable, energetic, young, and extremely normal compared to the vast majority of politicians in UK politics. I think he'll come across really well. He is relatively new and young and will have to, do a lot of work in terms of getting more experience with media and things like that. But the ingredients are there for a very, very bright future, I think, for Josh Babrinde. So I think that's brilliantly exciting. The federal board elections are a little bit more tricky. What's happened is that the rules were changed during the election campaign itself, causing a huge furore inside the party because of legal advice about how to interpret the Supreme Court ruling over gender issues. So the Liberals obviously being extremely pro trans rights and very unhappy with that Supreme Court judgment are up in arms saying, we need to defend our own principles and run our internal elections as we see fit. Lawyers obviously saying, well, if you don't want to get sued after the event, then really you need to change them, this, that, and the other. And then those who don't really care either way on the debate just saying, but you can't change the rules during an election, which of course does seem ridiculous to most external people. So they have got their own internal strife happening. But the very good news being that I think Josh Babrinde will be a really brilliant injection of fresh energy into the party.
What do you think that change means for the actual political leadership of the party? So what does it mean for the noises of that Ed Davey has been increasingly facing?
Well, you've now got another directly elected president who is an MP, because the outgoing president was Mark Pack, who they put in the House of Lords. So you've now got, like Daisy Cooper as deputy leader, a directly elected, young, charismatic, brilliant person who is going to get lots of media opportunity and also have a very critical role in running the party, deciding on target seat strategy, election strategy campaigns. And therein will come the point of contention. Does the party stick with the 2024 strategy of saying, here are the seats we can pick up, either from the Tories or it's going to be a Lib Dem reform runoff? We don't have to worry about Labour. These aren't seats they can win. And we can climb from our 72 odd seats to potentially 90. Or do they say, no, actually, we need to have a big national campaign because the Greens are now overtaking us in national vote share.
Yeah.
And in order to be believable to voters in saying, no, I know we might look like we're in third or fourth place, but really it is only going to be between us and reform here, that they would need to be polling in third place nationally. And that would require quite a different communication strategy to the country. So I think Josh and Ed, I don't know, but they might take quite different views on which of those to pursue. And I think there'll be some interesting conversations happening, and we'll bring what we know to listeners when we get it. Well, listeners, we always like to leave you with something to do. So Alex, what's the call to action this week?
Write to your Labour MP, if you are in a constituency that has a Labour MP, or to a related Labour MP. Incidentally, I hope people know that you can write to an MP if you work within their constituency, for instance. You can write to an MP if your parents for whom you have responsibilities are within their constituency, or the school your kids go to, the headquarters of the company you work for are in their constituency. So you can be their constituent by proxy in several ways. And with 400 odd Labour MPs around at the moment, I don't think you'll have trouble finding one that is somehow connected to you. And make your wishes about Starmer known. I don't want to influence those because I don't think there is a right answer. I think increasingly it's become clear that Starmer may not be the person that leads Labour into the next election. I don't think I'm being controversial by saying that that's a possibility. If you want Starmer gone earlier, if you think that would be a disaster, whatever you think the parliamentary party should be doing, now is the time to let Labour MPs know that that's your view, because a lot of the time they will act on what they think voters feel, and sometimes that might not be what their constituents and voters think. So it's good, I think, to make your views known to them at this stage.
Quiet Riot.
It's that time of the week when Alex delves deep into the frothosphere to find out what's getting the right knickers in a twist. It's time for Wokey Dokey.
Wokey Dokey.
All right, Alex, what have you unearthed this week?
So this week,
Oh, he's going already.
Lawrence Fox tweeted, "I haven't bought a poppy this year. Can't bring myself to contribute to the head of diversity, equity and inclusion salary. Also, the Pride poppy is a big put-off. Woke kills everything. I refuse to support it. Tough one." So, and this is not a one-off, by the way. Peter Cardwell did a big segment on Talk TV entitled Woke Poppies. Let's have a little listen to it.
Yeah, I'm wearing one of them at the moment, as is Matthew, and this is whether there should be, it's on sale for £8 on the Royal British Legion website, a pride flag attached to it, and they've also decided to have a diversity, equality and inclusion officer, advertising that at between £63,000 and £67,000 a year. They've also given £10,000 to Stonewall. Stonewall has been in touch and said Stonewall is grateful to receive donations from a range of organisations who support our mission to advance LGBTQ plus equality for all, including those who serve in our armed forces. Stonewall is part of Fighting with Pride, which is campaigning for LGBTQ plus veterans to receive adequate compensation for the appalling discrimination many experienced during their service. We believe that all workplaces should be inclusive, helping our society to thrive. That is the words of a Stonewall spokesperson. Don't know if it's man or woman. Maybe they don't either.
Basically now the poppy appeal has become an opportunity to just crack a few transphobic jokes, it seems. No one seems to acknowledge that it is the Royal Legion itself that has decided to put those alternative badges out. I understand a lot of people will think a poppy should just be a poppy. It's just about this one thing and it shouldn't be about anything else. But, you know, the Royal Legion raise a lot of money through these things and put out poppies that have, you know, club badges attached. Chelsea Football Club and Tottenham Hotspur FC. So I don't see why a pride flag is a particular sign of disrespect, especially considering there are organizations within the veterans community and the military community who are still fighting for the right of LGBT plus people in the army and those who were thrown out of the army until really quite recently for being found out. So if it is the Royal Legion's choice to put out those, you know, limited edition poppies, let's say, because they think they can raise money through it, and the money goes to incredibly worthwhile causes, why are people getting their knickers in a twist? Surely on any other issue and any other product, these ostensible libertarians' view would be, if you don't like it, just don't buy it. So just don't buy the rainbow poppy, buy the regular one. Like, why are you trying to tell the organization that's actually been responsible for these things what to do and how to raise money? So this week, I'm afraid, it's the poppy that is woke. It's remembrance that is woke.
World War I, woke.
Thank you, Alex. And listeners, we love hearing about instances of wokey dokiness that you find on the interwebs. So please do keep them coming to quietriotpod@gmail.com.
Quiet Riot.
I turned off news altogether.
I hate to say it, but I don't trust much of anything.
It's the rage bait.
It feels like it's trying to divide people.
If we got clear facts, maybe we can calm down a little.
NBC News brings you clear reporting. Let's meet at the facts. Let's move forward from there. NBC News, reporting for America.
Quiet Riot.
And so, Trump has doubled down on his threat to sue the BBC for $1 billion over the Panorama programme's editing of his January 6th speech, despite the resignations of the BBC's most senior executives.
Are you going ahead and suing the BBC?
Well, I guess I have to. Why not? Because they defrauded the public, and they've admitted it, and their top echelon.
Director General and the CEO
This
both
is
resigned.
within one of our great allies. This is supposedly our great ally, BBC. The government has a chunk of that one, I guess. But that's a pretty sad event. They actually changed my January 6th speech, which was a beautiful speech, which was a very calming speech, and they made it sound radical. And they actually changed it.
But tonight you are saying to our viewers that you will go forward and file a defamation lawsuit against the BBC.
Well, I think I have an obligation to do it because you can't allow people to do that.
This government is mercifully still backing the BBC, with Secretary of State Lisa Nandy describing it to the Commons as a light on the hill and a national institution that belongs to all of us. A review of the corporation's funding over the next decade is still expected to retain the licence fee as the basis of its funding, but look at a mixed funding formula with additional revenues from advertising and subscription services too. If the suit goes ahead, the case could rest on whether anyone in Florida watched it online and felt misled. If that hurdle is cleared, a US court then needs to decide whether Britain's biggest broadcaster intentionally deceived viewers. In the meantime, the BBC board must find a replacement for Tim Davie, the marketing man who is often slow to apologise, but quick to make staff sit through impartiality seminars. But who will even want the gig to be the full person for inevitable missteps by presenters, researchers, and crucially, editors? Alex, doesn't Trump's reaction and the size of $1 billion in defamation threats tell us everything we need to know that the edit hit a nerve because he was, in fact, inciting violence?
Maybe. I mean, look, Trump's lawsuits are always ludicrous anyway. He's sued various media organizations for several billion and then settled for a couple of million. He's suing the New York Times, I think, at the moment for some astronomical figure. So the size of the suit is on the low side, believe it or not, for Trump going after media organizations. It's one of the lowest recently. That's very much his MO. And he knows that most corporate entities will put some money at the end of the stick and extend it into his cage so that he goes away. I think it did hit a nerve. And I think that's part of why the cock-up was so annoying to me. Because there are other bits of that speech that make the same point. He'd been making speeches and statements in the lead up to January the 6th that very, very directly incited violence. There's a whole 10 days, basically, of very incendiary stuff to choose from. So why go and make the case even more striking? I think that gives him an out. I think that allows him to say, see, even the BBC, which they say is the most impartial worldwide broadcaster, tried to stitch me up, and now they admit to doing it. So I think it's been a massive gift, actually, to Trump and his claims that everyone is out to get me and everything except what I say is fake news.
The BBC News has come under fire from Russia and Israel over its reporting of those countries. Now, of course, the USA and Trump. The Guardian's Jess Elgert took to Blue Sky to ask, maybe Keir should demand the heads of major US networks anytime they imply Britain is on the brink of civil war or living under Sharia law, or does it not work both ways? She's got a point, doesn't she? Because when the story first broke of Davie's resignation, my gut reaction was that it's yet another example of Britain's weakness in the eyes of the world, that alone, cast adrift from the EU, our national broadcaster now must bend the knee to the King of America.
Let's remember that this isn't just about an editorial cock-up. This is mostly about Trump being Trump. And I think we need to keep these two issues separate. It was the right thing for the resignations to happen because they were going to happen sooner or later anyway. So, rip that bandage off quickly. But at the same time, it showed weakness as well. The BBC couldn't win with this one. While we've been recording, there's a story breaking in the States that I think is going to impact this. The Democrats have released more emails from Epstein. And so this is either going to work in the BBC's favour because it will divert attention or Team Trump are going to be wanting to use the BBC to distract as much as they can from the 3 emails that have just been released. The whole BBC, Farage, I can't emphasise enough that there are 2 separate issues here. BBC needs to do better, but at the same time, they're just victims of Trump doing what Trump does.
And if this suit does go ahead, Kenny, what do we know? You touched on this a little bit about Trump's record of success with lawsuits. Like, he has sued a lot of people a lot of times, but how often does he actually win? How often does he actually settle? Particularly when it comes to media outlets, which seem to be among his favourite people to sue.
A few journalists have dug into this, and the win rate is about 31%. All right, if you take all of his legal cases, he loses about 60% of them, and about 9% are unresolved. From a media defamation perspective, I remember there was a piece that Vanity Fair did, and they said that Trump had never successfully won a libel or defamation case.
Yeah, his CNN one got dismissed.
That's right. They end up settled or dismissed rather than being decisively won in court. These figures don't tell us everything. Like I say, many of his suits end in settlements, which means that even the term winning is a bit ambiguous.
Yeah.
And the stats often refer to government litigation as well, rather than private lawsuits. And there's a division there as well. And when you sue as often and get involved with the law as often as Trump does, it's kind of inevitable that there's going to be a bit of a mix-up. In terms of what it implies for the BBC situation, I think if Trump does proceed with the suit against the BBC, history suggests that an outright win in court isn't particularly likely. The more likely outcome is either dismissal or settlement by the BBC. They're going to want to make this go away one way or another. A drawn-out case is going to serve as a public relations tool more than anything else for Trump, rather than a clean legal victory. And for the BBC, the threat may have more value as a signal or an intimidation tactic, as it were, than a high probability legal fight. And in other words, the BBC and its team shouldn't be assuming that Trump can win easily just because he's brought a big number to the table.
Quiet, riot. Kenny, you are a news guy. The BBC, while producing epic entertainment like Strictly and Traitors, is first and foremost an information provider. So do you think the Beeb can turn things round by putting a proper journalist in Davy's shoes rather than a management guy? Or is this now a much more existential issue for a monolithic organisation that really has so many different competing interests to manage that it's almost ungovernable?
There's serious points to be made on both of these issues, and the BBC itself has struggled for a long time to maintain relevance is probably not the right word, but to find its position, I suppose, in the very modern media, the digital media world. In terms of whether switching a journalist into the top role, as far as that's concerned, look, that's going to boost credibility, and the BBC needs that. Let's be quite clear about that. So having someone who's cut from newsroom cloth may well help repair trust externally and possibly internally as well. A stronger editorial culture.
Are you applying?
My hell. Sometimes you look at a job and you go, whoever's doing that there's just no way of winning, is there? But it's important to signal change. And that signalling is, I think, a key part of what the BBC has to get its head around. But by itself, it's not a magic bullet, because structural problems are going to remain. Issues such as board oversight, editorial governance, cultural inertia, and let's not forget the political pressures that are inevitably coming at the BBC all the time. Public trust erosion even. These are all far, far bigger than one person, and the brand and reputation has already been damaged. And there is another risk for the BBC, and that's the sort of financial risk. The license fee model, competition from social and digital media, the fragmentation of audiences, YouTube running away with audiences left, right, and centre. These require strategic decisions. And that, speaking as a former journalist, is beyond what putting a journalist in a chair could be expected to deliver. So I don't think it's a nice, easy solution.
Alex, Kenny's right. The funding model is always the thing that we come back to. If Farage wins, it's clearly unlikely the BBC's charter would be renewed. He's called for a new private sector leader for it, warned that this is the organisation's last chance, and if they don't get it right, there are swathes of people waiting, refusing to pay the license fee. In that horribly dystopian future where he might be Prime Minister, what would it mean for the UK's reputation if the BBC goes the way of privatised news outlets?
I think the BBC is the jewel in the crown internationally. I can say that as someone whose first contact really with the UK were things like the BBC and the British Council. The things that effectively project what it means to be Britain to the world, and the things that have been really poorly funded and much maligned back here. I don't think British people have a clear idea of how important those things are internationally. They really, really are. When Farage was talking about the BBC, I was struck by something he said. He said, we live in the world where we have to pay for everything, so why should the BBC be any different?
Most of the BBC services should be subscription. Is there an argument there should be a small subvention for news? I just think we're moving towards a world where we pay for everything.
Put that to one side and think about how it might apply to the NHS, because I think that is genuinely Farage's worldview. You have to pay for everything. And so I think actually that betrays a weakness in Farage's armour and should be really hammered. But put that to one side. I have quite a radical proposal for the BBC, if anyone is listening. I think the factor that has most degraded the information environment in which we live, and you know that this is a view that I have discussed with you many times, is 24-hour news. It ends up being breathless. It ends up being exaggerated all the time because the biggest story that hour is the biggest story. And so there is no light and shade. There is no giving things their proper weight. It is a constant process of running after your own tail.
Reactive. Yeah.
I don't think the BBC, being funded the way it is, I don't think the BBC has any reason to be chasing that 24-hour model. I think that's got it in a lot of trouble. I think it has meant that a lot of its journalists have this incredible array of media through which they need to constantly be putting out, whether it's clips on social media or blogs on their website or every hour on the news program. I think a very good defensive move that would vastly improve the quality of the BBC News output and actually make a point that we're not here to be like other channels. We are here to provide quality, reliable information, would be for the BBC to move back to a model where they do a lunchtime bulletin at 1 o'clock, a 6 o'clock news, and a 10 o'clock news. Newsnight at 10:30, there will be other news-related programs. But I think constantly going after what is the biggest story this hour and what can we say about it, it does not suit a broadcaster whose aim is to be accurate about everything I put out. It suits a broadcaster who is after clicks and who doesn't really care that much about accuracy and veracity. So that would be my radical proposal for the BBC.
This episode is brought to you by Netflix. This Monday night, witness the end of an era. John Cena takes center stage for his final appearance ever on Monday Night Raw. One last match, one unforgettable farewell. Come celebrate the legacy of a true WWE legend. Monday Night Raw, November 17th at 8 p.m. Eastern Time, 5 p.m. Pacific Time, only on Netflix. Be there for the moment everyone will be talking about.
The other thing we have to, I think, realize is that this is part of a larger battle being waged. We have seen far-right figures in other European countries, in France, in Germany, in Greece, in Norway, attack their public broadcasters through the thing that happened with the BBC to say, let's privatize France Inter or let's privatize the ARD. This is a battle between sources of accurate information and people who do not like accurate information. Political forces for whom accurate information is like their kryptonite. We have to realize that this is what's going on here.
And on top of that, there's one other point I think that we should remember. The BBC is important in terms of things like soft power and cultural reach as well. it's not just domestic. The BBC contributes globally. If its model changes, if it comes under more pressure, the scale, the reach, the nature of the output may shift. And the knock-on effects of that could well be that the UK's soft power footprint takes a fairly substantial hit, and countries might start looking to other national public broadcasters for standards. So it's beyond the importance of its news output per se. This is actually about Britain's place in the modern world as well.
A great British institution is under attack from a foreign government. President Trump is trying to destroy our BBC, not because he cares about the truth, but because he doesn't want to get away with his lies. Trump has undermined press freedom in America. Now he's trying to do the same here, disgracefully egged on by the leader of reform. So will the Prime Minister tell President Trump to drop his demand for $1 billion settlement from the BBC? And will he guarantee that President Trump will not get a single penny from British licence fee payers?
Let me be clear, I believe in a strong and independent BBC. Some would rather the BBC didn't exist. Some of them are sitting up there. I'm not one of them. In an age of disinformation, the argument for impartial British news service is stronger than ever. And where mistakes are made, they do need to get their house in order, and the BBC must uphold the highest standards, be accountable and correct errors quickly. But I will always stand up for a strong, independent BBC.
So, Alex, it is the jewel in our crown. Is there a way to want the BBC to do better, but still support it as an institution?
Yes, I think there is. I think Lord Patten put it extremely well, and I will play the clip in a moment so that people can hear it in his eloquent words. But I think it is to realize that the BBC is not, especially the news part of the BBC, is not there to reflect views. And I think once you actually realize that, you begin to see that the BBC began to go very, very wrong around the Brexit debate, I think. That's very, very clear to me. I think that's the first time they tried to actively accommodate this idea that we mustn't upset people on the fact that they believe X when really the reality is Y. That is certainly one of the side effects of the Brexit referendum. And they need to return to the position where they are valued, as Lord Patten says, not because they reflect the view of the last person who shouted at them.
I think we owe a great deal to the BBC. It is not perfect. No human institution is at all. But it's certainly the best broadcaster in the world. Now, you'd have to think very hard before you accepted that the BBC was fake news and that everything Mr. Trump had said was true. When people say BBC needs to change its worldview, what they actually mean is they want the BBC to reflect their own prejudices, whether or not they represent the truth. What would we do with Mr. Farage's criticisms? Would we start saying that Brexit had been a fantastic success, something that had actually cost the country billions? I just repeat, I don't think anybody's complacent about the difficulties of covering this difficult, dangerous world as well as possible. But I don't think that we should allow ourselves to be bullied into thinking that the BBC is only any good if it reflects the prejudice of the last person who shouted at it.
And on that note, how do we defend it, Alex? What's the call to action?
There is a part of the BBC called BBC Media Action, which is a charity. It operates internationally. It collaborates on projects around the world to nurture independent reporting in countries where this is very much not a given. It's part of the work that the BBC does internationally to mentor and help people, especially in the developing world. It is worth supporting. You can support it with money because, as I said, it is an international charity. But we will give the link. You can simply subscribe to their newsletter. They do send out incredibly useful sort of updates from parts of the world that are not in the news. I find it an immensely useful way to keep up to date with what's going on globally. And that, I think, is a way to declare support for the things the BBC does well without giving them blanket approval for the many things they have done badly. And I think one of the things they have done badly mirrors the Labour Party's mistake in strategy. appeasing a part of the audience that will never be appeased because they don't like accuracy. They don't, Reform UK will never be a fan of the BBC because they want Nigel Farage to be able to come out and say black is white and white is black and Brexit was a tremendous success and go unchallenged. So you ain't going to win those people over. The only thing you can hold on to is the sort of work BBC Media Action does internationally, which is good reporting. If you do good reporting, you're in many ways invulnerable. The moment you try to be partisan, you damage your reputation.
Quiet riot. And now it's the moment of the week when we remind you that not absolutely everything is going to complete shit. It's time for Grin and Share It.
Good news is welcome to me. Bad news is hell come to me. Good news. I want good news.
What have you got for us, Kenny?
Hat tip to a couple of our listeners. Gareth Evanson is one of them who flagged this particular story up to us last week. Imagine, if you will, being 4 years old, lying inside a giant donut of steel and noise, told to stay still for 20 minutes while strangers peer in and lights flash. That's an MRI machine. And guess what almost every kid hates more than broccoli or bedtime? Anxiety. Now, imagine that same kid getting handed a colourful Lego version of that giant MRI donut. They play with it, they see how it works, they laugh a bit, and they walk into the real scan a bit more calm and a bit more curious. Well, that's the magic of the Lego MRI kit. So Lego, through its foundation, designed a donation-only set. So you can't buy these. These are just sets that Lego donates to hospitals. And it looks just like a real scanner. It's got a bed, it's got a control room, it's even got little minifigure doctors. They're so cute. And Lego's donated more than 10,000 of these kits to hospitals all the way around the world. And they actually work. Apparently, 96% of healthcare staff who've used the set say it does indeed reduce children's anxiety before a scan. And almost half of them say it cuts the need for sedation or anaesthetic absolutely entirely. Isn't that amazing? There's one story says it all, because this is a global story, but there was one example that I came across in Edinburgh, and there was a little girl in Edinburgh called Ivy, and she had to have an MRI. Her first scan, when she was only 2 years old, was done under an anaesthetic. Her second one, she stayed awake because she'd been practicing and playing with the Lego set. She learned what to expect. She understood the noises and she did the scan without stopping. Her mum, bless her, said it was an absolute godsend. And Ivy called herself brave.
Aww.
And honestly, she's right. Bravery sometimes comes in 4 studs by 2.
Oh,
So there's over 1 million kids worldwide have now used these MRI kits. It's a big old deal. MRI scans are safe, but they're really, really intimidating if you've ever been inside one of these machines. Lots of noises, total stillness required. Play helps kids process what's coming, which means less fear, it means fewer drugs, fewer tears, and it means calmer parents as well. So I think that that's what happens when a brand remembers its purpose. We can say that Lego is building confidence, not just castles.
Oh, that's gorgeous. That's gorgeous. And there's also been recently this fantastic photo of the Danish Prime Minister giving the Egyptian leader a Lego kit of the pyramids, and both of them just laughing with absolute joy. So maybe Lego is the future.
Yeah, I'm trying to think, what am I anxious about that I could ask or petition Lego to build to help me out with it? Hey, Lego, can you do a Labour budget within the next fortnight? Thank you, Kenny. Listeners, as ever, we'll drop a link in the show notes so you can not just grin, but also share it. Quiet riot. And on that upbeat note, we will bring this show to a close. Thank you all ever so much for tuning in, and we look forward to catching up with you again at the weekend in our Sunday School edition.
But for those of you who are paying supporters, subscribers ahoy, we're excited to chat with you before then in our live Ask Us Anything session, which is tonight, that's Thursday, at 8:30 p.m. You'll already have had an invite in your inbox if you're a subscriber, and we hope you've got plenty of funny, serious, and potentially tedious questions up your sleeves for all of us.
And if you're not yet subscribed and would like to join the next editorial board or ask us anything sessions, or simply want to help the show out, then head over to ko-fi.com/QuietRiotPod to sign up as a monthly backer. Supporters allow us to keep bringing the show free of charge to everyone at the same time.
And if you can't stretch to that yet, don't worry. You can help us by leaving a review, sharing the show with a friend, or buying something from our bookshop. The link, as ever, is in the show notes.
So until next time, keep calm, achieve a sort of shavasana, and keep on quietly rioting. We love you lots and lots.
Bye.
Quiet Riot is an audio production by Cooler Heads with Naomi Smith and Alex Andreou. Produced by Kenny Campbell. Music by Mariana Sangeeta. Artwork by Simona Canelu. And edited by me, Alex Reese.
Quiet Riot. When a fart's not funny, never.
Farts are always funny. They are just always funny. A friend of mine did a production of a play by Ionesco, a sort of absurd comedy, which involved a character of a sort of weird neighbor woman. And this neighbor woman had terrible flatulence. He had an actual fart machine that does all different kinds of long ones, short ones, squeaking
If
ones.
anybody's listening, that's my
rumbling
Christmas
ones.
present right there.
And so he had this machine. He could basically press it whenever he wanted to emit one, but never knew what sort was coming. It was on basically fart shuffle. It was on fart shuffle mode.
You know how Zoom will enlarge the person who's talking. and obviously thought they were on you, farted really loudly, and Zoom just went straight to them.
That's brilliant. That's brilliant. If they were muted, it would have popped up with a thing. Are you
trying to say something?
Are you trying to say something?
When your company earns unlimited 2% cash back on all purchases with Capital One, that's serious business. So Stephen at SandCloud got a serious business card, the Spark Cash Plus card from Capital One.
We used our 2% cash back to help build our retail presence.
Savvy, Stephen.
And we get big purchasing power, so our business can spend more and earn more.
The Spark Cash Plus card from Capital One. What's in your wallet?
Terms and conditions apply. Find out more at CapitalOne.com/SparkCashPlus.